We're going to hear from Nath. So let's give it up for Nath.
Hey, how are you doing? Are we good? Hey, I got a question. Have you guys ever made a mistake? Sometimes. So I'm not the only one here, right? So I got a story. It takes place back in the summer of 2014. Ooh, I know. It's the last mistake I made. Ooh. Hey, so I'd been working a bit, and I finally could afford my first NBA jersey. I was real excited. I was like, oh man, Dan already has like 2. I got to really catch up. So I did some research, sussed out the sports stores, sussed out what they had. And I was like, oh, they don't have a lot of range, and they're just like the generic players. And I was like, I don't want that. Like everyone's got those. So I did some more research, and I find out there's this store in Adelaide where you can order in any jersey. I was like, what? I can't believe it. This is awesome. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to... Yes. So I go to the store. I'm like, okay, can I get this jersey? So what I asked for was the New York Knicks orange jersey, which isn't around. Not only that, I asked for this J.R. Smith. Oh. So for all you don't know, he was a bench player back then, like 6th man. Like, no one wanted his jersey but me, right? So I'll be the only one. Anyway, the dude's like, yep, no problems. It'll be here in a week. Week happens. It's in the store. I'm really excited. I go into the store. I pick it up. It's in the plastic bag. I was like, yes. I'm really excited. I'm like, can I try it on, see if it fits? He's like, yeah, sure. He didn't seem too excited. Maybe it happens all day to him. Anyway, so I go. I try it on. I stand in front of the mirror. I was like, oh, there's something wrong with this jersey. Can we see the picture? Okay, this isn't New York. So, can everyone see how the New York is crooked? Yeah. Mine was crooked, but that wasn't the worst thing about it. Adam, come up here, mate. So, this was the worst thing about it. See how New York ends in a K? That K was touching that white bit there.
Oh, no.
It was lopsided. It was wrong. Huh? What? It was just wrong altogether. I was like, oh, I went to the cashier. I was like, hey, man, what's happened? Like, I didn't order this. Like, what's going on? And he's like, sometimes this happens. That's all he said. And then, you're right. Thanks, man. Can everyone get out of my hand? So he's like, this is right. It just happens. Sometimes to make a dodgy one. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. And then I was like, it's not as bad as I'm thinking. It can't look as bad. Then I made the worst mistake. I brought it. I bought it. We'll get my grammar right. Anyway, so I bought it. I take it home. I lay it on my bed. I'm like, this jersey's bad. And I text someone, and they just laughed at me. I can't remember if it was Daniel or Dale I texted. I was just like, hey, is this bad? They're just like, yeah. Anyway, I was like, oh, I'll just take it back, get a refund. So I take it back, and they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can take it back. We'll happily take it. But you're not getting your money back. You have to go store credit. And the thing was, the rest of them were fake too. So at the end of the day, I'd lost like money for it. But here's the kicker part, right? That fake jersey cost as much as a real one would at Foot Locker. So I could have just got one from Foot Locker, like a legit one.
Yeah, you idiot.
Oh, it was dumb, right? Look, we all make mistakes. We're not all perfect. I buy dodgy basketball jerseys. Let's just add it to the list. So I've got a story, right? We got the people called the Israelites. Now, Daniel talked about this, but this is another story, okay? So the Bible starts off with the Israelites. They're doing evil things. They're making mistakes. They've been in battle for 7 years, and every time they went to battle, they lost. We're talking about 7 years of losing. Every time they rebuilt, they got destroyed. I don't think I could last 7 years of losing. Then I
could do 30.
So after 7 years of losing, they asked God for help.
Good.
So God answers them. He's like, yep, I'm going to help you. He sends this bloke called Gideon to help him.
Wow.
Yes. Gideon. So he uses Gideon to bring victory to them. So Gideon wasn't sure though. He was like, God, are you sure? And after a few questions of saying, no, I don't want to do it, Gideon finally accepts the responsibility God has given him. So after this, it was time for battle, right? So God spent some time preparing him. Now, they've got an army 32,000 strong. That's a big army. So they're about to go to battle, and God's like, Gideon, your army's too big. If you guys win with this army, you guys aren't going to declare it was God's victory. You guys are just going to boast in your own ability. So what God does, he goes, okay, you've got to make your army smaller. So he asks, God tells him to ask his men, who's scared? So Gideon asks his men, who's scared? 22,000 men put their hands up. And he's like, go home. Go home. Go home. He's left with 10,000 men. Now, God again tells Gideon, no, your army's too big. 10,000 men, it's just going to be the same. So, he tells his soldiers to go get a drink. If they kneel down to drink, they had to go home too. 9,700 of them did that. Gideon's like, you got to go home. See you later. Oof. Can anyone do the math? How much are we down to? 300. Nice. 21. So, after Gideon does this, God again says, you will have the victory. Don't be afraid. You guys will be fine. You have the victory. They go to war, and what happens? They win.
What?
I know, right? 300 men. It's amazing.
It's been done. They should make a movie. And then a sequel.
Like, this story is awesome because it teaches us a couple of things about God. Firstly, God is willing to forgive. I think this is pretty fundamental. At the start, it says the Israelites were doing evil. And as a result, for 7 years, God didn't allow them victory. But then, the moment they ask God for forgiveness, God grants it. And not only that, he helps them. He sends Gideon to help them. Like, I think this is really cool for us because it doesn't matter how long we've been away from God. The moment we ask, he forgives. And not only that, he's willing to help us. He's willing to help us. You can be assured that when you ask God for help, God is working on it. Yep. This is good news. It's awesome because we're serving a God who doesn't care about our past mistakes. That he loves us that much. When we call on him, he'll be there every time. Yep. The second awesome thing about this Bible story is God's willing to help. But before I get into this, can I just say, when problems come in our lives, what's the first thing we do? This goes against human nature. We always ask, how can I fix it? Yeah. The Israelites did this for 7 years. But then, when they turned on God, the next battle they win. I don't think that's no coincidence. When we do things in God's strength, we win. We see victory. This story also shows it takes time. God spent time to prepare Gideon. I didn't talk about it much, but God, he allowed Gideon to ask some questions. He then spent some time with him. And then, not only that, he trained him to become a mighty warrior, which is, I think, really cool. And that when you ask God for help, he might not help you. He will be helping you, but it's going to take time. He's going to turn you into a mighty warrior that when that battle comes, you are prepared. You will see victory every time. The next thing is, it's not often going to make sense what God asks. I don't know much about war, but I know you want the bigger the army, the larger the chance of victory. Is that right? Yeah, but you know what? They still saw the victory. They still won the battle. So sometimes it's not going to make sense. Sometimes God's going to ask us to do weird and wonderful things, but at the end of the day, we're still going to have victory. We're still going to see God's love shone. The cool thing is when we ask for God's help, it's not often seen. God will often do stuff behind the scenes to ensure the victory. Have you guys ever struggled at school and that night you just pray, Jesus, I need your help. And then the next day, the teacher of that subject comes up to you and is like, hey, I've got lunchtime for you. Do you want to run through the test? Do you want some help? God is constantly working behind the scenes to ensure we have the victory. See, when God's method is at play, when he shows us our plan, it's not always going to make sense, but he requires faith from us, yeah? He requires obedience to his plan. And that brings me to my last point. We need to have faith in God's victory. What I love about this is we've already got the victory. God told Gideon 3 times before he went to war that he was going to win the battle, yeah? Like, we've got the strongest, we've got the richest, we've got the most powerful man on our side once we ask for his help. And he's willing to at any time, which I think is really cool. We just have got to be prepared to ask and go against like our own human nature. We just got to be prepared to ask. Like, so what does this mean? Well, life can seem like a battle at times. Sometimes when we're facing these battles, we are too ashamed to ask for God's help. We sometimes say, God can't forgive me. What I've done is too unforgivable. Well, there's a God out there who's willing to ask, who's willing to help you at any time. Regardless of what you've done, there is a God who wants to help and help you have the victory in every situation. But it's up to you to accept his help. Allow him to prepare you. Allow him to constantly tell you you are loved and the victory has already been won. All he's asking is that from when the time you ask for help, you have faith in God's victory. Yeah.
Thanks, Nath. Who thinks we're pretty blessed here at Rev? We got to hear from some of the girls last week, got to hear from some of the boys. Got a lot of people who are pretty talented. One of the things that we really believe at Rev is that God can equip any of us, right? That we all have something to give here at Rev in this family, that God uses all of us. He doesn't just use those of us who have got everything together. He'll use those who, like me, always make mistakes all the time, and God still uses us. That's cool and good news, isn't it? Yeah. And the fact that it doesn't matter what we've done, God will forgive us, and He'll forgive you for whatever you've done. That is amazing news.